Hi, welcome to October 2018 Patreon video, and today I'm going to be talking about studying for imaginative drawing, what it takes, what you have to do, that sort of thing, because I'm doing it right now for a thing that I want to be able to draw. So I'll be talking about that. I'm going to be also showing you what patrons will be getting this month as rewards, and I'm going to give away the postcard. And I'm going to be talking about Patreon and giveaways and what happened and some things like that. So, yeah, let's start. So let's begin with the rewards in the order that my file is putting them up here. So we've got, these are 2 minute gesture drawings done in brush pen. Same. And then these are 5 minutes done with 2 different brush pens. This is a 5-minute drawing done with a Ritmo charcoal pencil on newsprint. Again with the brush pens. So I've been doing a lot of brush pen gesture drawings because I've found them to be much more fun to use when doing gesture. Anything that I would want to do longer poses, I'd probably want to use charcoal. But I thought that after doing them with a brush pen, it's just the brush, the ink, something about it just glides faster. It's just more fun for me to be able to do that. So this lady here is the same one that I ended up doing the charcoal pencils after when we did the five minutes. This is the same lady, except I did these with a brush pen. And then again, more all of these. See, but the thing is that when we're doing figure drawing at work, it's mostly gesture. So we never really spend more time than 5 minutes on just any given pose. And usually when we get up to a 10-minute pose, there's like a rebellion. Like, no, what are we doing? Partly because adding tone and shade and shadow masses is something that is outside of most animators' not only skill set but desire to even want to do. As animators, because we don't use tone to be able to do three-dimensional drawings, we don't get that luxury of having shading and edges and shadows and rendering and all that stuff. We have to be able to draw solid without using tone in any way. Because of that, a lot of animators just don't know how to do it. So when you're in a figure drawing class and the model is posing for longer than 5 minutes and you have time to actually start adding tone, they don't know what to do. So they're done. I mean, the actual line drawing is done and they're ready to move on. So that's part of the problem with in the animation culture, in the animation industry culture. Like I said, tone isn't often taught, and so a lot of animators just don't know what to do with themselves once you get into a longer pose. Okay, so I just thought I'd let you know, but there are exceptions to the rules. There's some animators who do know how to do that and know and have bothered to learn just because they want to expand their ability to draw. So a lot of painting studies in my sketchbooks. I'm continuing to do my painting studies. I'm really enjoying them. This is from my sketchbook. So all of these, beginning here, it says September 8th. This one I dislike extremely. I just don't like it. It's extremely stiff. It's just, there's something about it's just terrible. It's one of the ones that I think is a fail, but I'm giving you everything. So even the drawings I don't like, you're gonna get to have. Again, this is on tan paper, and there is a little bit more of an opaque thing going on here because I have the white gouache. So when you mix white gouache with watercolor, you get an opaque watercolor. But mostly it's just white gouache here and transparent watercolor. This one is actually a nicer version of something I put on Instagram. I ended up kind of archiving it on Instagram because there was so many shadows on the photograph that I put on Instagram that it didn't look the way it did here. This is what it actually looks like. There was some weird shadows on the wrinkly paper on the photograph I took of it on Instagram, and it made it look like I put shadows where shadows didn't belong, and it just looked like an ugly mess. So this is the good version. So all of these were from photos, and this particular photo was very green, and I decided to leave it that way. I decided to go with the greenness and just play it up. Okay, so I've been playing around with style a little bit. You guys know about the comic I'm working on. You've gotten the model sheets, the turnarounds. You've seen the head turnarounds. I did all that work, and now all of a sudden I'm like, I wonder if I mess around with the design and do something else with it. So it happens, you know. It's the designs aren't that far different, but the noses are a little bit more constructed. That's like the biggest change. And the eye designs, I'm playing around with eye designs a little bit more. So the noses are a little bit more developed. They're a little bit less anime, a little bit more Western, and the eyes have more consistent underneath eyelashes. And I'm playing around with the hair. This was a failed attempt at hair for Kelsey and Arya. Again, messing with the faces, mostly just changing eye designs and nose designs, eyebrows, that sort of thing. Very subtle things, just experimentation. But this was more about the hair. How can I do this kind of curly hair that tends to be with African American women? They have these really beautiful curls, and sometimes it's very thick curls, and I wanted to figure out a way to do that so that it's easy for me to do it, because Kelsey is black, and so I want to be able to draw her over and over, but I don't want to be killing myself just drawing itty bitty little curls. So it's really kind of difficult and tricky. By the way, if you notice, this is actually white paper, and you can see that this is from my sketchbook. This is yet another sketchbook. I just bought another sketchbook. It's this one over here. It's a Canson sketchbook. These are the kind of sketchbooks that I've always used. Here's this other sketchbook here that it's completely full, so at some point I think I am going to do a sketch tour of the sketchbook. But what I'm saying is that this sketchbook is usually the type of sketchbook I tend to use. So here's the actual drawing, you know. The reason I ended up getting yet another sketchbook is because the ones that I'm using to do my watercolor studies and my paintings are really high quality paper, or paper that I want to do something fancy with, like the brown tan paper. I didn't want to just do tests and scribbles and ugly drawings on the good paper. I didn't want to waste the good paper. I wanted to do the ugly stuff on crappier paper, and this is crummy paper. This is not a good paper, but it's a good paper to make ugly drawings in. They just mess up and just do whatever. The problem with this paper is that it's very translucent, so I've gotten into the habit of drawing in the back of the paper, and so when you look, so sometimes the drawings come through the other side of the paper, and it's kind of annoying when you're drawing on both sides of the paper, which is something that I started doing at the end of that other sketchbook. I usually didn't do it because I was using markers and other things like that, and I could show you that then, but we're basically going to go through all these sketches. So, but this is not good paper for drawing fancy in, but it is good paper for messing up. This is my mess up, draw ugly sketchbook. This is the I don't care if it's ugly. I'm studying, I'm doing scribbles, I'm just thinking sketchbook. You need a sketchbook where you can fail. You can absolutely fail horribly. You need one. This is mine. This is my I'm going to fail horribly sketchbook. So that's why these are all experimentation. And here's that other page. And I failed horribly here. And so what I did was I put a post-it on top of the drawing. So because what happened was I put her eyes way up here and it didn't look right. So what I did was I traced her eyes. I think I traced her eyes. And then I lowered the drawing down. And then I taped the post-it on here and inked this. And this is more like what I wanted. And here's this too. I messed up on the chin, so I added a post-it and then I stuck it on right here. I could have used whiteout on here. Here, if I used whiteout, it would have ruined. It would have given me a lumpy. It just wouldn't have been okay. So it was just easier to put a post-it on it to fix it. Again, here this was an experiment for hair, just trying to see if this was good hair. I still haven't decided what to do with the hair. I'm gonna more experimentation is needed. This was just me messing around again with expressions. I just felt like experimenting more with the eyes and the mouths and stuff. But I also wanted to experiment with a pencil, colored pencil, and added. And not ink it all the way, just add a little bit of, colored pencil right in here. And then here's an unfinished, uninked head. So it was just me playing. This is just me completely experimenting and playing around. Okay, so let's talk about. Oh, and by the way, here's another experiment right here with a Prismacolor, and then I was adding alcohol in it to see if I could just make it look like a marker. I talked about before, at the beginning of this video, I talked about studying, I talked about learning something new. I'm talking about this being that being my failure sketchbook. Doing stuff that isn't great, whatever it is. So this is my sketchbook where I am allowed to fail. Because my comic is going to require me to draw a fox. In fox form, it's the fox is a spirit fox, a Japanese spirit fox called a kitsune. So she's going to have the form of a human, but she can transform back into a fox, and in the story she will transform into a fox. Therefore, I'm going to have to design a fox. Now, I've drawn dogs professionally. I've drawn horses professionally. I've drawn mountain lions or leopards professionally. I've drawn quadrupeds professionally. I've even done a video of me drawing a kitten and making it cartoony and showed you my process of drawing animals. However, I've never felt comfortable drawing animals because I never just sat down and made a complete study in the same way that I've done with human beings, of their anatomy, of what is going on under the skin. And the reason why that is important is because when you're looking at an animal and or a person, and you're seeing all these lumps and bumps and stuff like that, the last thing you want to do is just copy the lumps and bumps without actually understanding what they actually are. Because when you're drawing something from either observation or from your imagination, you want to be able to explain to the audience what they're seeing because you know what it is. And so subconsciously, to the audience, it looks convincing because you know what you're doing. To that end, you need to know what you're doing. So like I've said in previous videos, recently I've done a lot of trips to the zoo, drawing animals, and I've realized that part of the problem that I was having drawing the animals is that I can't draw them from my imagination. You have to be able to draw something from your head at will in order to be able to sketch it quickly, because people tend to move a lot. So a lot of it has to come from your knowledge of human anatomy, of muscles, of clothing, animal anatomy, that sort of thing. So when you're drawing animals, you got to invent the animal while also looking at the animal. And so you have to do a little bit of both. You have to look at what it looks like in reality, but at the same time you have to know what you're doing enough to be able to invent it. And I've never been comfortable inventing animals because I've never done the proper study, the proper anatomy study, the proper none of that stuff. Also, Ahobo, who's a patron on the coaching tier, he's going to be drawing animals as well. We've been talking about it, so in order to be able to help him better, I also need to know what I'm doing too. And it's funny because we're both studying the same thing in the same way, and it's really kind of cool to trade notes. So I'm teaching him to teach himself how, because of the way that I approach studying something, so that I could imagine it, so I could do it from my head. So this is the process that I tend to do. First, I copy photos or three-dimensional, or if I have a skull, I would set it up and draw it from different things. I happen to there's a website where you could actually have a CG skull, a dog skull, and so I use that to do some of these. But there's also photographs of skulls that I also use to be able to do some of these. And so what I did was a complete, as accurate observational drawing. Just drawing it. The reason I did that and just trying to get an accurate drawing is so that I could go through all the nuances, and I can, and my body can go through it. I've observed it thoroughly. I've done the observation. I have seen it, and then later, I started trying to do that from my head. I started to turn these little red things are me testing whether or not I've understood what I've drawn. That doesn't mean that I don't have the object in front of me. I'm drawing it, and then I'm looking and testing back and forth, so that little by little it's sinking in, and it's coming in. And then after a while, I start trying to come up with a formula for it. So, for example, this is the shape that I saw in that Patreon PDF that I gave everybody of animal drawing, that handout that from Disney. That PDF. I looked at it because there's a lot of really great tips on drawing quadrupeds there, and one of the things that they said was right here. This head shape is this would be like my lay-in. That would be my lay-in shape, and I found it to be extremely helpful. And then after that, I started putting in all the details, and then I noticed things like the eye socket of the dog doesn't actually connect. There's a big gap here. And so things like that, like these little things, and how would I do it, and how does the jaw turn, and where does it line up? And so I started giving myself rules, like this lines up to this goes over here, this comes up here, this curves down, this doesn't connect, this is not, this shouldn't be so big, this is about halfway, this part over here is this cheekbone is halfway to here, and all these elements that I started giving myself as rules so that I could be more and more consistent. And at first I was looking at the skull over and over, and little by little I was able to start drawing it out of my imagination, out of my head. But it was just over and over and over, just trying to solve it, trying to find ways so that I could remember how to do things. I actually told Ahobo about memory tricks. And memory tricks tend to be about association. So you give yourself like landmarks so that you can make associations to what compares to what, so that you can more easily create something from your head. You have those little mini rules that you create for yourself, and all those things are just they're not in any book. You're creating it as you sketch. You're trying to make it so that you can remember little things. You're forcing your memory to to come up with formulas so that you could come back and do it on your own. That's a lot of the time the formulas are given to you in drawing books, and then so you memorize those formulas. But when there aren't any drawing books that are doing what, at least with the animal books that I've got, they didn't do what I needed them to do. You have to make them up, and so you have to make up the rules. Very similar, in fact, to that video I did about drawing on model from model sheets. It's kind of like that. You're making up rules for yourself so that you can remember how to draw the character on model. Well, it's the exact same thing here when you're trying to draw something like a dog's skull if from memory, and you're trying to memorize how it all works so that you can consistently come up with it out of the top of your head. And then it's time to start doing the same thing with the animal anatomy, the muscles. So I started doing the muscles of the dog's face, and I started doing the exact same thing. So I did a drawing of the muscles of the dog's face from my animal anatomy book, and then I started to try to memorize how the muscles actually fit on top of the skull. Now that I knew how the skull worked, I understood how the muscles inserted into that skull to create the muscles. So I knew that the blank areas around the muscles were the skull, and it was showing through. So I knew that. So this was me first learning how to do it, and then I started making my notes here, and then these are from imagination. And so I familiarized myself with the animal skull and the animal anatomy, while often just going back and forth, checking the anatomy, going back. You're constantly memorizing these things by doing them. The more you do them, the more it becomes muscle memory, the more it becomes part of your visual memory, because visuals are easier for us to understand. And by doing is even easier still to understand. When you're actually doing it and creating it, you're going to remember it even more. Extreme visuals are good ways to increase memory. And doing is also a good way to increase memory. It's not just rote, but rote with visuals and doing all together is just memory overload. Like, you will absolutely memorize these things. They will become part of you. It's the reason why we are taught in kindergarten to write the ABCs over and over and over and over. It's repetition, 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 and it just becomes part of you. It's the exact same way if you want to memorize something like a drawing thing so that you could draw it from your imagination. Just rote, do it over and over and over and over, but not only that, but then make notes like, this lines up with this goes over here, this kind of and so that sort of thing. And it also helps if you have studied the human anatomy, like the human muscles, because the animal muscles on the face line up to a lot. See, these muscles up here on the forehead are the exact same ones that are here on their forehead. These circular muscles here are the same ones on the dog's muscles here. These muscles here on the nose right here are the same big honking muscles that come down here into the dog here. And then we've got this cheek muscle here that comes all the way down here, and that's what this is, this long one over here. And so in the mouth, how there's like rotating muscles on the mouth, the dog's mouth, which is here, this is where you see that the muscles are right here. They go around the muscles of the dog. So this is me drawing from my imagination, drawing all these things. And of course, this huge muscle right here on the cheekbone is actually this round one here on the dog. So the one thing that I've never actually done is memorize the muscles of the face. Now I know the muscles of the human face because I've memorized the ones on the dog, which is really bizarre. But because I used Riley method rhythms and Bridgman construction to be able to draw faces, and the Riley method rhythms tend to include the rhythms of the muscles of the face when you see them superficially, and it's so helpful that I didn't need to memorize the muscles of the face. But with a dog, those rhythms kind of go out the window, and you have to kind of reinvent the rhythms. So it's better. So for me, it was easier to like learn the muscles themselves and then try to come up with a way to make them rhythmical. So here's my part of my rhythm here. This goes down here. These must come down here. Like I'm coming up with rhythms myself so that I could better understand and better draw the dog head. Here is a little scribble I did for the postcard, which is going to be a bell. Here's a little eyes scribble study. These are just drawings I did. Here's of Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, and here's of Nubia, Wonder Woman. I'm deciding whether or not I need a Wonder Woman drawing that is in color, that's a little bit more full figure than the one that I've done for the postcard. So I'm eventually going to draw Wonder Woman at some point. Two of them I'm going to draw Diana and Nubia. So, and on top of that, hair, again, more experimentation with hair here. So these are just like me messing around, experimenting, trying to come up with ways to draw hair better than I already draw it, because the more I paint women, the more the more I realize that all my time is spent painting the hair. And because the faces have so few details, you really are, it's really subtle. You just kind of boop, 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 and there's just, you barely kind of touch the face, because the more details you put, the older they would look or the less pretty they would look. So you kind of do the least amount of strokes as possible, the least amount of detail as possible on a woman. But then you spend 90% of the time painting the hair. I've realized that beautiful hair design makes the drawing. Like, it just really makes the drawing. So I wanted to just keep practicing drawing hair. And see, so I've been doing hair studies and just trying to come up with ways to design hair that I'm happy with. Oh, and I didn't do a lot of digital anything. I've been so obsessed drawing on my sketchbook, so obsessed doing everything traditional, painting traditional. It's just so much fun. It's so much fun to draw using traditional tools. It's just so fun. I just can't help myself. And so now when I go to digital, I'm like, oh, it's just not the same. It's just not as fun. But I'm going to be doing a lot of a few more digital drawings, because I'm going to be doing some more digital experimentation, just doing yet another approach to painting digitally in the future. So you're going to get more digital drawings from me in the coming months. But this month, not so much. I painted Jodie Whittaker, Doctor Who, because I love Doctor Who, and I'm looking forward to the premiere of the new Doctor and the new series. And I don't know when I'm going to be able to watch it, because I don't have TV, I don't have BBC, I don't have any of that stuff. But I decided I wanted to draw her, and I wanted to do a little painting, and I didn't want to do a realistic painting. I wanted to do something out of my head, but I wanted it to look like her, but I wanted it to look like a cartoon version of her, and I wanted to do it, make it look like in my style, and it came out okay. I don't love it. It needs work, but it turned out okay. I think I need to have done more sketches to come up with a different design. Here's the first version with the inside the TARDIS, and here's all by herself solo. And I don't know what happened to the sketches of the Doctor that I had on my sketchbook. I must have accidentally not scanned them. I will have to scan them and show them to you. I didn't like the way they came out, but at least I could have showed you what they look like. So maybe I'll do that later. And here's the postcard, the Bell postcard. Here's the pencil drawing. This is the digital version, so this is something that the silver patrons will get along with Doctor Who's PSD. And this is the postcard that I'm going to be giving away this month. Here's the postcard right here. All right, so the winner of this month's postcard is George Ward. George, you won the postcard for the second time, or was it the third? I remember that you won a Batgirl a couple of years ago. Now you get to win this Bell postcard. This was drawn in marker and Prismacolor pencil, but it was originally drawn digitally so that I could then do the marker painting. The thing about the giveaway. Okay, so Patreon contacted me and said that they don't allow giveaways on Patreon for a couple of reasons, and one of them being that giveaways are considered gambling, and gambling is illegal in a lot of states and in a lot of countries. So they can't necessarily legally allow giveaways on Patreon for that reason. There's a lot of laws that have to go into giveaways, especially if and because giveaways apparently have been abused on Patreon a lot. And in order to avoid all of that, they don't want anyone on Patreon to do giveaways. So if you notice on my website description, the giveaway information is gone. Okay, so what am I going to do? Well, all right. If patrons just if I happen to draw a postcard and I happen to just decide to give it to a random patron, I mean, it's not officially on my Patreon site. Okay, so on a whim, I could or couldn't. It's not legal. I'm not legally doing any. I'm not bound to do it. So if I happen to call your name and decide that I'm going to give you the gift of a postcard that I happen to have hand drawn, that's fine. But the other thing I'm thinking of doing is, and I think I'm going to change it this month, so I haven't done it as of the time of this recording, but I think I am going to give away the digital copy of the postcard to every one of my patrons, no matter what tier they are. So if you're at tip tier, you're going to get a high-res JPEG of the postcard. That way everybody, no matter what, gets a digital copy of that postcard. And then for some reason I'm going to call someone's name. I'm not saying that they're going to be on Patreon. Just a follower. And they're going to get the postcard just because I feel like it. Okay? Just thought I'd let you guys know about that. Okay, so that's it from me. I talked about all the things I wanted to talk about. I talked about drawing, studying, so that you can memorize stuff and draw stuff from your imagination. How to break it down and how I use a sketchbook to do that. How I have a sketchbook designated for ugly drawings and failures, and I don't care if it all comes out bad. But that's really what sketchbooks are supposed to be all about anyway, right? I talk about the difference between some of my sketchbooks according to the paper, what I used it for. I've also talked about the figure drawings. I talked about the giveaway. Yeah, that's it. So in conclusion, I would like to personally thank all my patrons by name: Aaron Garcia, Al Hobo, Anastasia Circuit, Bill Fisher, Bill Munier, Binny Brett, Brooke Brown, Chanel Winja, Duran Rivera, Eric Prestaman, Eric Salham, Gallo Viking, George Ward, George Crawford, Heather, Hilla Lacefield, Ingrid Hayek, Kent Dirks, Lynn, Madeline Dupreez, Mary Charozzi, Michael Rosemusen, Paul Nass Rain, Richard Anthony, Shopping for Noobs, Sterling A. Brooks, Steve Howard, Steve R., Tamara M. Cotton, Tim Bazarath, Tim John, Ulf Meyer, William Bell, A Young Stormlord. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being my patron. I really appreciate it. It really helps me and my family out a lot. So thank you. I am very, very grateful. And I will see you next time. All right, bye.